Well, hello everyone. It is the top of the hour now. It is time to get started on today's Go Global webinar series webinar, which is how to sell online in the USA. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much indeed for joining us. You are all very welcome, and I'm so pleased to see so many attendees. We will be doing our level best to ensure that you get real value for your time with us today. I'll just take a moment to introduce myself. My name is John Worthington. I am the CEO here at IBT. I love and support and recommend strongly our Go Global webinar series. It's such a great way to share information and to learn. Personally, I attend 2 or 3 webinars each month at least, along with TED Talks and similar, so that I can listen to and understand what's going on in the industry and listen to our leaders and practice professionals, and nowhere more so than when it comes to the USA in terms of innovation. So understanding what happens in the USA goes a long way to helping understand how to sell online in many markets around the world. Today we have a great program planned for you. I know, as I have seen the extensive groundwork that has gone on in the background there, Susanna, with a number of our US colleagues, has put together a great program, so I really do hope that you'll enjoy it. But before I let Susanna loose on you and the presentation, a few moments of housekeeping. So do know that this is a webinar that is one of a series of Go Global, and you will not be surprised to know that our objective is to help you grow your business online and globally. So for future webinars, don't hesitate to go to our website and check out resources. There's a section there all about the webinars that are up and coming, a great lineup before Christmas. Wow, Christmas is only sort of a little over 2 months away. Also, we have been doing this for a long time, some 2 years now. So there is a back catalogue of webinars that you might be interested in. Do know that the webinars can be found on www.ibtpartners.com/resources and then webinars on demand. Today's webinar will be approximately 45 minutes. I will do a brief introduction and then I will hand over to Susanna Hardy, our host presenter today. We have 4 polls. If you don't know the webinar formats and you've not attended one of our webinars before, please be ready. We launch polls. We really want your opinion. Please share your views with us. We will announce them and then ask that you scroll up and give us your feedback. There will be time for questions at the end. So you see on your screen questions, that plus box. Press plus, type in your questions, share them with us, and we will attempt to give you all of the answers at the end. If not, do know that we will come back to you over the next days to respond directly. There is a chat box. Don't hesitate to use it. Really interesting to get some chat going on in the background, and we have a moderator with us who will be giving some feedback along those lines. At the end of the webinar, there will be a quick survey, 6 short questions. Please take a moment again to give us your feedback. And finally, do know that today's webinar is being recorded and it will be made available to you. The slide deck will be sent to you. The link to it will be sent to you by email on Friday after it has been prepared and curated by our back office here in London. So you don't have to take any notes. It will all arrive. Just sit back now and enjoy. A word on our presenter, Susanna Hardy. Susanna is a founding partner and director of IBT since we all got started, which was in 2002. Susanna is a director for all of our client services. So those are the online global website building and marketing programs that we deliver for our clients. Susanna was educated and lived and worked in the US, actually specifically in New York, and you might get that from her accent when she starts presenting. There's definitely a New York twang there, but Susanna has also lived and worked in Germany, Belgium, the United Kingdom and France. So Susanna has some great insights into selling online in various markets and most notably the US. Susanna does speak German, French, English and Dutch and has put her understanding of knowledge of languages and culture to great use for our clients through our global programs. A brief intro about IBT. So IBT is a company. We are a private company. We are a team of online engineers and business web-savvy developers, profiles like Susanna that are international and very much online. We have staff in the major markets of the world, and this of course includes the number one market for us, which is the US. We have staff in Illinois, Ohio, and Florida. We've been in business since 2002 providing online global services. Our core activity is helping companies like yours, grow their business internationally. And we do that by building what we call localized websites, country-specific websites, and then providing all of the ongoing online marketing, E&M commerce services in those target markets. We call that online global. Our core message, therefore, is use the web. Website localization is a fundamental ingredient to success in today's world, and nowhere more so than in the USA. In today's digital world, every company's number one asset for marketing and sales is online, so do use it. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Susanna. Susanna, are you there?
Yes, Sean, thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Most of you are located not in the U.S. Most of you are located actually in Europe and things, so it's definitely a good afternoon. So what we're going to talk about today really is sort of a brief overview of the USA online in general. And here I've divided up into sort of the big three, I've divided the US into big three sections and try to give a top down on some of the bigger trends that are hitting the USA in terms of online. And then I was going to discuss a little bit about the sort of E and M commerce choices that exporters typically face when they're looking at the U.S. market and what are the pros and cons of those choices. And then dig down a little bit further about specifics on your website choices and how you can best leverage the websites to boost your sales in the United States. And as John said, you know, feel free, just go put some questions in there, and because I've left some time at the end for questions, and we'll be collecting those and getting down to them at the end. So with that, I just want to talk just very quickly then about sort of the USA in general. So we all know it's large. You know, it's certainly very large. It's in terms of GDP, it's pretty well the same size as the entire of the EU. It's about 17 point something trillion dollars. 320 million inhabitants, all this. It's got some great business attributes that we all know that are you know, associated with it, you know, low taxes and business friendly and so on, flexible labor. But I wanted to emphasize a couple of things too. It is not a homogeneous place, and when you're looking at selling into the United States, even online, you need to be aware that it is not as homogeneous as you might think when you're looking at it from the outside. Regulations are different elsewhere. Payments are different. Taxes are different. Infrastructure, and this is important for the web. Broadband is quite patchy, and that map that you have there, those colors, just shows you a little bit how much a mosaic the broadband access speed can be in the United States. And then, of course, it has these big regionalizations. You know, the selling to someone in San Diego is very different from selling to someone in Connecticut. So there are very strong regionalizations. And there's other factors as well, like big minority populations. I mean, 37 million Spanish speakers, for example. So I wanted to, and by the way, we've got an exporter's guide to the USA, which you can download from our website as well, if you have further interest on that. But just sort of skimming through the top three areas. So I'm going to divide it, first of all, the eastern seaboard. And this runs really from, you know, the bottom from Florida right up into Maine, you know, through the Carolinas, and then up into this area here of the Boston to Washington corridor. And I love the map on the left, which actually shows lights of the USA at nighttime when it's not cloudy. And you can see just the density of population there in the eastern seaboard especially, and particularly what's known as this Boston to Washington corridor. Along there, but it's also right the way down into the Floridas and the Keys, where you have this very dense population and economy. As I've written there, if you were to take the eastern seaboard just as a single economy, it'd be the third largest in the world. Now, the Midwest, often slightly neglected by exporters. And I think I want to just emphasize a couple of points about this. First of all, yes, it's smaller than in terms of economy, it's smaller than the Eastern Seaboard. But still, at like $4 trillion, that's equivalent to, say, the economy of Germany. So it's not negligible. This is a big economic zone. It's a quarter of the U.S. population. And if you include, let's say, its sphere of influence, which includes sort of parts of Ontario and perhaps bits of Pennsylvania, northern New York State, you're quickly getting into sort of $5 trillion worth of GDP. I think the other point I wanted to mention in terms of for online and anything to do with e-commerce and so on is its strength both in manufacturing, like the big car companies, and then you've got things like agribusiness like Caterpillar and Cargill, Monsanto, and Kellogg's and Kraft and things. But you also have huge retailers. The big retailers in the States, most of them have their headquarters in this Midwest area. Walgreens, Sears, Procter & Gamble, Target, McDonald's, they're all headquartered in around this area. And I think part of that is because of its logistics attributes, and it's the logistics hub, particularly around the Great Lakes, that sort of Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin area, and the Chicago area. And then I wanted to point out here that some of these things are just perfect for e-commerce, not just because of the terrestrial telecoms network that goes together with the logistics, but also this enormous internet exchange, commercial internet exchange that you can get. And then something called carrier hotels. These are enormous data centers, really. They have servers, data storage, and routing hardware. And they're called carrier hotels. They're particularly large. Some of the largest in the world are based in the Midwest, and that's also, again, a reflection of that e-commerce ability. Then, obviously, the West, all sort of, very wealthy and very techy and things. It's, in terms of wealth, by the way, the West Coast has the highest number of ultra high net worth individuals. That's people worth more than $30 million in cash, according to Forbes. In terms of GDP, it's the equivalent of, let's say, Germany and the UK combined. It's over $6 trillion. And obviously it's leaders in things like, aerospace and communications and media, but it also has a lot of manufacturing. I wanted also to point out it is, as an area, it's expensive. San Francisco, for example, is sort of 60% higher cost of living than the national average. And this is also reflected in a lot of consumer choices that you might have with that. So it's an interesting point as well in terms of e-commerce. Remember, the size is important if you're looking at e-commerce choices. I think San Francisco to San Diego is about 1,300 miles. Regional diversity is huge. And then cultural diversity is also huge. The north is very different from the south of the West Coast. And again, we have this very strong concentration of Spanish speakers. There's reckoned to be something like 11 million bilingual and up to 41 million Spanish speakers in the entire United States. It's reckoned that there'll be about 138 million by 2050, but who knows? There you go. I just want to also add one more slide about the West, just to show you a little bit of some of the things online. This is a slide with lots of colors. It really just wanted to show you the density of broadband access, which reflects how ubiquitous the internet is in the West Coast. If you think living in the UK here, or in some of you I see are from Germany, if you think that you are wed to your mobile phone, try living in California or in the Bay Area or something. The internet is so present. It is really startling for someone who's even used to someone like someplace like Europe. So there you go as well. Some of the largest, again, these large carrier hotels, these data centers, and commercial terrestrial telecom networks. Again, perfect for a lot of the e-commerce. Some of the major trends we're seeing in the U.S. at the moment online, obviously it's mobile, and I also want to add it's cross-border. So for mobile, up to a third of all the e-commerce sales at the moment are going on to mobile phone. Now, this is not the largest in the world. I think that's probably someplace like China, where it's up to 70% sometimes. But in the U.S. now, really all websites are expected to have strong mobile functionality. So any kind of website that you're looking at online has to have really good mobile functionality for that. Cross-border trade, it's growing double the size of e-commerce in general. And it's obviously the core is the U.S. to Canada, U.S. to Mexico, but it extends further than that. It goes right the way down, and people really are looking very closely at cross-border sales as a major part of how people are spending money these days. It's really increasing very sharply. And the next two other big trends, obviously, is B2B and B2C growth. So there's e-commerce and mcommerce, both on the B2B and on the B2C side. So, we all talk about the B2C as though that's something that's the major part. But in fact, the B2B dwarfs it. It's double the size of the B2C markets. And it's in terms of the U.S., the B2B is certainly growing at over 20% at the moment. Just in terms of some of the stats, if you're looking at comparing the United States to Europe, for example, in terms of millions of shoppers, Europe has about 225 and America has about something like 210 million e-shoppers of people who shop regularly. In fact, 68%, so nearly 70% of the U.S. population say that they shop online at least once a month. So that really is a paradigm shift in the way people are buying. That's again B2C, but B2B is equally present. John, if we have time, I'd love to have a first poll.
Perfect, exactly. Thank you very much indeed. That was fascinating. I have to say, every time I get these numbers updated, I am very, very impressed. Here is our first poll. So please, everybody, are you ready? I'm about to launch it. Therefore, you can go give us your feedback. Here you go. Does your company actively, there you go, sell online in the USA? Is it a yes? Are you thinking about it? Or is the answer no? I'm going to give you some feedback here. I'm getting 44% are saying yes. That's dropped to 36%. 55% say no, and a good 10% are saying thinking about it. So there we go. I'm going to close this poll now, and I'm going to say thank you very much indeed. This poll is now going to close, and we will, of course, share this information, these stats with you on Friday. Susanna, I've closed that poll, and it's back to you.
Thank you very much, John. That's interesting. I'm going to go through some of the big E and M commerce choices that exporters typically look at when they're faced with exporting online, and we've sort of categorized these into 4 types, which I've called like online malls, and then plugins and DIY sites and distributor platforms, and then own country-specific websites. So first of all, just starting with the online malls. Across the world, there are 3 big giants. Obviously, it's sort of Amazon, Alibaba, and Rakuten in Japan. Amazon, obviously, for the United States. There are other ones too, but I just wanted to mention the top 3. What's interesting about Amazon is that it's an all-inclusive, integrated system. So it's a really great place to start. It's really easy. It works really well for little small companies. It's perfect for B2C. And it's good for companies where brand is perhaps not the most important issue that they have. They just want to try and sort of dip their toe in the water, see what things are like, because Amazon does take a lot of the logistics out of it, the pain out of it. So if you're really just starting, you've got some small little products you want to test out the market with, know that there is no brand development or brand identity, but it is an easy way to test a market. So it's great for the first toe in the water for little companies. In terms of the disadvantages, I'd say again, it's you're not developing your brand. and you're not really developing a sort of target and nurturing target audiences and leads over time. There's also no ongoing marketing or promotion. And finally, you've got some monthly fees and things like that to worry about. I guess one of the things that our clients also face when they go this route is that they are unsure how to deal with the returns and after sales that very often U.S. clients insist on that. So, but it's a nice, easy way to start and to test your marketing. Next on the line, really, I wanted to point out distributor platforms, and this is a type of sort of targeted Amazon. It's not a sort of general big online mall. It's more your distributor, and it makes a lot of sense. This is very common. This is probably the most common thing that a lot of our clients would start out with, really. Certainly for B2B companies, since why not let your distributor do the work? And distributor sites can either be very general, like the example I gave there of Lowe's or B&Q or something like that in the UK, or it can be very specific to either a product vertical, like here I've got Tree of Life and Elf, or it can be generalist retailers and things. So it can be different types depending on your retailer. Most companies who opt for distributor websites when they start out trading internationally, because that's sort of a natural thing to do if you've got a distributor in the market, and the distributor takes care of all the marketing and the inventory and so on. But I think the big thing that you have to be aware of from the very start is that you are opening up directly to competition, and you are, in a sense, opening up as well to price issues over the medium time, because the pricing and comparison between you and the other products is so obvious. And the other point that we have come across quite regularly with our clients is that sometimes the distributor itself becomes not your preferred client or not your preferred partner in that market. So if you want to change distributors or be more flexible, how do you deal with it? If your distributor basically owns your brand in that market. So we are concerned about that, and we think that you have to be worried about that from the very beginning and cognizant of it. And we have a couple of solutions for that, which I'll get on to in a moment. Right, then the next one really is sort of DIY plugins, and these, they're just a huge wealth of different softwares that you can buy off the shelf and just plug into your current website to enable it in terms of e-commerce. I think a good example, for example, is WordPress. Now, they started life as a blogging platform, but they've now bolted on lots and lots of additional plugins and add-ons and rebranding as an e-commerce developer. They own 7 different e-commerce platforms that are all compatible with WordPress, but in fact, they're not very multilingual. Although the largest one of them is called mcommerce, which is it's an absolute giant. It's got 20% of all e-commerce sites in the world, so it's huge. But what I think is important to note here is a couple of points. The first is really scalability. A lot of these plugins have issues when you look into scaling larger size, when you're looking to scale up your products and your markets. And the second point is multilingual. Many of them are not really fit for purpose for international websites and multilingual websites. And this is something that's always really confused me with the plugin platforms. Surely e-commerce from the very beginning implies that you're looking at going internationally, that you're looking beyond your core domestic market, and that you must have, in that case, some kind of view on multilingual sites and hitting other markets right from the very beginning. So for me, it's never really made total sense to have these DIY plugins if you are looking to go international. So our real solution, something that we have found works very well with our clients, is really to have your own global websites, which are e-commerce enabled. This gets rid of the dangers of having a distributor own your brand in a token market. It also allows you to develop your brand, develop your marketing, and really control all of things like new product launches and so on. So it really, I think, is important to maintain that you have the control in international markets. And this allows you the choice whether to use your online website in that token market, in that target market, to go through an online mall, or have a DIY plugin, or allow your distributor to use your website, or in fact have your own e-commerce platform on it. So this is something that we found works really well with a lot of our clients who are wary of some of the inconveniences, the disadvantages of going just straight either with malls, plugins, or distributors.
Susanna, that was a very good summary. Thank you very much indeed, and I totally see that, and therefore I think it would be time to go for our second poll. Can I do that? Let me just launch it now, so please everybody, here you go. Which e-commerce routes are you active in today? So there you go, listening to what Susanna has been talking about, global malls. I mean, let's talk about Amazon, and Amazon. That, of course, there's Alibaba. Local distributor, plug-in DIY, or your own website. So, or indeed none of these. So let me give you feedback. I'm hearing the biggest one is own website by far. That's 75%. 33% are saying global malls, 25% are saying local distributor, and 25% are saying none. So it's a good mixture. It's a good broad cross-section. Interestingly, 8% is plug-in DIY. I'm going to close this one with a little bit of a horn to say, here we go, let's close this one down. That is the end of our second poll, announcing it with our horn. There we go, close. Susanna, back to you.
Thank you, John. That was a very horn sound there. Amazing. Okay, well, in terms of for what we're looking at then for online in the United States, how do we best develop a brand and manage distributors, develop e-commerce, all that in the United States? Well, I thought I'd just put this one up. Woody Allen, a great New Yorker, and I think he just said it all. You just have to be there. And from a salesman's point of view, I think I know what he means. The first step for any salesman in that buying process is to make sure that people know you're there. People know that you exist. So how do we get your export website to really show up well in the United States? Well, for us, that means you also localize them. That gives them visibility, credibility, and accessibility into the United States. That's what we would look for. So, what do we mean by localized websites, and what are some of the details from that? Just starting here, a localized website has country-specific content and mobile design. So, it means that the design and the content are really rooted in the local culture, in the local country-specific ethos and ways. This allows any prospect looking at you to have that trust that you need to even begin the buyer's journey. And I took these two screenshots here, one of sort of a road in I don't know where, Wales or somewhere like that, and then the bottom screenshot of Route 66 and sort of emblematic road for Americans. There is a difference when people conjure up images and so on. So we find that it is really important to make sure that the content and even the design reflects the local character. The other sort of second points that we would really highlight is the multilingual navigation and geolocation. This is really important. Even if you're in the States and you have only a British flag, believe it or not, that's a little bit confusing to a lot of Americans. They want to see an American flag there. I can talk, we've done a lot of work on the differences, in fact, between some of this. I'll talk about that later, between UK and US websites in particular. Next is really content management systems. And these are the software platforms that websites are built on. Not all of them are fit for purpose for international and multilingual sites. Make sure that you have the right CMS. And then hosting, where do you host your sites? We would really recommend you to host locally. It's really optimizing for up and download speeds, and the whole user experience and site responses. So the sites are also recognized as local sites for SEO, for search engine optimization purposes. That's very important for your search engine to give you credit for being there, for being relevant to that market. So next on our list is sort of regulatory requirements, and here actually Europe is a lot stricter than the United States, but we think this is a space to watch, even in the United States, where it is more lenient than in Europe. We think over the coming years, the whole regulatory requirement and data protection and what's called authorship will become major issues in all the major markets, including the U.S. So make sure that you are really up to speed on those regulatory requirements. Domain and domain names are very important. We basically say, use local domains to protect your online brand. It allows, once you've got a local domain, you can then have country-specific marketing, and you can track any visitor access so that you can really use your website to nurture leads and target who's actually coming to see your website. The more local domain names you have, the more protected you are as well. So, to protect your brand, and also it's very nice for the search engine optimization. One thing, again, we would say with regards to exporters, what we see very often is that a lot of them give access to their distributors. We would really recommend you not to give your domain name to your distributor in your target export markets. You may well fall out with your distributor. You may have a bad time with him at some point. You may want to recoup that domain name, and that's going to cost you money down the line. So better to make sure you own and control your domain names internationally. And the last really is just to make sure that your website is active, so that you really ensure that your social media platforms reach your target international markets in all their languages, including the U.S. So a U.S., again, is different from a UK market in terms of social media. We've got quite a lot of this on our website, and I'll get back to it later about the differences between UK and US social media platforms.
Susanna, yeah. Can I jump in now? I think it's time for the third poll on this subject, so I'm about to launch it. Please, are you all ready? I'm going to launch poll number 3. Here we go. So do you have localized websites for your export market? So here you go. Here's a chance to have a review. When you look at your online presence, where are you? Are you yes in all our main export markets? Are you yes only a few, perhaps the main ones? Are you thinking about it, or is the answer no? So interesting cross-section. We've got it's pretty even, actually. It's about 18% are saying yes in all the main exports, 20 markets, 25% yes and only a few, another 25% are thinking about it, and 33% perhaps are saying they're a no. So I think with that, I'm going to close this one down again. Give us a chance. There you go. The third poll has now closed. And here we go.
Thank you, John.
Okay, I'm going to hand that back to you. And
thank you, John. That's great. Okay, just wanted to talk a little bit about getting search engines and how to optimize those in the United States. Now, Google is obviously the #1 search engine, so #1 search engine in the world, and it has this huge market share in places like Europe. It's got over 90% market share across most of Europe, but also in places like South Africa, Mexico, Singapore, places like that. In the United States, it's got about 72%. The rest is really taken up with Bing and Yahoo. But I think, given doesn't have the dominance it has in Europe. Nevertheless, you should really, I think, focus on optimizing your website for the Google. That seems to be the most efficient way of making sure that your websites can get found. Now, Google says the key really is just saying from Google, don't optimize your websites for the search engines, optimize it for visitors. So that really sort of goes in hand with their increasing emphasis on user experience and content quality, so that you basically optimize the United States website for Google, for your brand name, for the products, and then obviously ensure that the sites address technical requirements and best practices for content quality for SEO. And what does this also mean in terms of Google? I think there are sort of three things that are really important for all websites anywhere, and that's really to use the right keywords, to make sure that you're compliant with the search engine guidelines, and Google publishes its Google Webmaster Guidelines, and you can download them for free and look through them. And then obviously to use really high quality content, and this is something that's very important for Google. But there are also three attributes which are very specific to international websites and US websites. And the first is really to have country and language specific content. If your website is UK language, then Google recognizes it as UK website and does not rank it really in the United States. It just won't, you know, it'll say that's not a relevant site for when people are looking at it, at searching for things in the United States. So what we would also recommend, again, is to have a US website and to have something in what we would call a top-level domain. You can either put it in those three formats that I put out. It's irrelevant to Google which one you put out. Here I'll put it for France, but you could do the same for the US. So www.company.us or company.com.usa or usa.company.com. It's all irrelevant. I think that's, but what's important is that you have this website in the US where you can hang the different marketing tools and search engine optimization on. And the third part is an hreflang attribute. Now this is part of a technical attribute that you could have, which would allow, again, search engines to recognize where your website is pointing to. So moving on, there's just sort of US specific. Again, this is about how a website looks in the different markets. Obviously, a website looks very different if it's a different language. For example, a German website versus a French website. So it's the same ranking algorithm, but you get very different results because you have different languages. But if you have a US website versus a UK website, again, same ranking algorithm, but you will get different results here. So it's, you know, some of the obvious ones are things like vocabulary. The English say trousers. Americans say pants. The English talk about lorries and things like that, and the Americans talk about trucks. So those are sort of obvious ones, but there's also things like, you know, units of measurement. And inappropriate units of measurements don't require extra effort from your potential customers to find information they need. But they're incorrect with regard to local industry standards. So, you know, the US and the UK have different standards. And just, you know, converting from imperial to metric just isn't enough. You actually have to do more than that. You have to make sure that the standards are correct. Currency is another major consideration when it comes to money, but additional fees for shipping, taxes, customs makes this quite an important topic. So again, just because you've got a UK website and it looks like it's in English doesn't mean that it is optimized for the United States. We've written quite a lot about this specifically and the differences in language that we find between UK and US websites. If you want to know more about that particular topic, I'd recommend that you download some of those assets. I've put a link on in that website in this slide, and you can download it when you want on that from our website. Now, just a brief word then on social media in the United States. The US uses social media slightly differently than Europe. US businesses use it differently than Europe. And they use it more than most European businesses. So if you have a social media policy in the United Kingdom, make sure that you're very active in, plan on being very active in the United States. There are over 180 million active social media users in the United States. In terms of companies, we reckon that it's over 50% of companies, and certainly any company that's exporting would be using social media as well. I just wanted to give you a little screenshot of something that, if you are not yet using WeChat, WeChat is actually a Chinese it's sort of a search engine plus an Amazon plus a PayPal rolled into one. But that's very much now hitting the West Coast and moving across the United States. It's the latest new thing that people are talking about. If you haven't yet checked it out, you can check that out. We'll also be talking about it more in a webinar coming up when we're looking at China and selling online in China. Again, we have also some assets on our website about social media in the United States and so search engine optimization with social media. Again, there's a link to our website on that if you like to find out more. Now, I've really cut it down sort of for this. I think that's pretty well it in terms of the information we can have time for today. There is one last poll, I think, John.
Yep, absolutely. Here we go. Are you ready? This is the last poll as we're keeping good with the timing. Thank you, Susanna. A lot of great information and on time. That is very commendable. Here we go, launching. Do you update your core website with content, with blogs and news articles? So how active are you? Is this a once a month activity? Is this a quarterly thing? How about once a year? Or even we don't have a blog or news section. So we're trying to get a bit of feedback here related to this. Helps us better understand and better serve your interests. So 55% are saying yes once a month. So well done. Commendable activity there. It's a definite no for the every quarter. 18% are saying yes, perhaps so once a year, and 27% don't have a blog or news section. So please, I would strongly recommend thinking that one through. And with that, I'm going to go. Here we go. Last of the polls has just been closed. Susanna, thank you again for being on time. Let me close that. And so, Susanna, do I understand that I'm going to dive into questions? Is it question time?
Well, I just wanted to give one last sort of slide here just to summarize. Basically, sort of, what we feel a U.S. exporter or an exporter to the United States could benefit and how you could benefit from a localized website to add that visibility and credibility that we think is very needed for the buyer's journey. Organize the sales process, build a brand, and create value for the brand, and then obviously coordinate all the markets, for any product launches and harmonizing prices. It's a great way also to make sure that all your distributors across the United States have that one single place where they're getting all the same information, the same resources, and then obviously to leverage some trade shows. Finally, for us, it's really important just to measure the impact that your website is having and adapt it to all your marketing. Now we've touched on a lot of subjects here. I hope that you've got some information. This is a very broad webinar that we've given. We have a lot of other information on our websites and other webinars about the more specifics of things. But I have left also some time for questions. John, do we have any questions?
Yep, absolutely. Look, thank you very much indeed. And please, if we don't pick up on your question, know that we'll get back to you. This one, I'm going to dive into this first one. It is from definitely a UK company because it's .co.uk here, but it says, can we use, they have a Spanish website to reach Spanish visitors in the US. What do you make of that?
I think that's a great question. I think that's great thinking, and it shows awareness that there are large populations of Spanish-speaking consumers and businesses in the United States. I would say, however, that if your website is pointed at Spain and is registered with a domain name in Spain and has Spanish content and references and everything else, it's just not going to be found in the United States. It's similar to a UK website in looking at trying to replicate that and push it into the United States. It just won't be found by a U.S. audience. But you can certainly use a lot of the content. You can then build yourself a U.S. website, or we can help you build a U.S. website and have a Spanish flag on it for Spanish speakers. Now, Spanish in the States is slightly different sometimes, but you can get away with not having to translate too much, and you could reuse a lot of the content, but you will have to build a separate website and have a separate strategy and optimization for the search engines if you're pointing towards the United States. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Susanna. That's great. And I've chosen this question because it's sort of as trade shows, and they're saying they do a lot of trade shows in the US. And how would a US website help their trade show attendance, I presume, in the US market? What do you think of that?
I think that's a great question. That's something I touched on only very briefly at the end here when I was talking about sort of some of the major attributes that we see our clients using their websites for. And we do have dedicated webinars just on this subject, but what we find a lot of times is that our companies are taking their local websites, let's say a US website, and say 6 weeks or 2 months before the big trade show, they'll start putting a lot of marketing into it, even some paid advertising to make sure that they're hitting their targets. And really putting out a lot of marketing, and that has had a massive impact on their trade show performances. It's really raised their profile enormously, and so made the investment in the trade show that much more worthwhile.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. And this one, it sort of loops back to what you were saying about the West Coast. It's a French, one of our French attendees is saying that their targets are all over on the West Coast, and is there a way to target them specifically through a localized website that they would intend to build in the US?
That's very interesting, and I think that it's even a few years ago people would have been struggling with that, but now it's really not hard at all. And we have websites that target just the entire West Coast, but like target specific areas within just Los Angeles or just parts of it. And the reason you can do that now is really technical. It has to do with IP addresses and geolocation. Because you can see people's IP address, you know where they're from, and that's where you're targeting. So we would really say that that is absolutely physically possible to really say, okay, we're going to have a US website, and it's really focused towards the West Coast, and you can even drill down and get it even narrower than the whole West Coast. You can just say just that part of the West Coast. Yeah, that's something that geolocation allows.
It is impressive, isn't it? Online and gets that granular. It gets right down in there. So I think we've got time for one more question. I've chosen this one. Guess what? That's kind of relevant. It's Google. If my website is optimized for Google in the US, how can I also get optimized for the other search engines? And Susanna, you mentioned Bing and Yahoo.
Very good question. And there are differences in the algorithms. There are differences in the optimization. We would say, however, that it's hard to be optimized for all three. There are less differences between Google, Bing, and Yahoo than there are, for example, between Google and Baidu in China or Yandex in Russia and things like that. And I think we've found that with our clients, if you're optimized for Google in the United States, you've pretty well got Bing and Yahoo covered as well, except with a few details. I mean, you're okay. It's not as though you're attacking whole new markets. For example, Russia, which has a different search engine, or South Korea, which has different search engines. So if you're well optimized for Google, you will also be capturing Bing and Yahoo for most things. The key is always going to be prime content, quality content, and relevance. So making sure that it's relevant for your local audience and quality for your local audience. Thank you, John.
And I guess that goes in the direction of localization. If it is localized, you'll achieve that. If you know who your profile target audiences are, well, there you go. Google will do the work, and so will Bing and Yahoo. Susanna, I think we're going to save the other questions and respond directly. Please do know that we will be back and to you over the next days responding to questions. I always have a little closing factoid. Today's factoid, in fact, sort of two little factoids. Fascinating to know that and guess the single largest e-commerce online shopping weekend. Now, when is that? In the US, of course, that is Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving this year is the 24th of November, 2016, and that is breaks all data, breaks all records in terms of e-commerce online shopping. And the second part of that is last year in 2015, more online purchases were made with mobile devices and with PCs. So there you go, driving the mobile. It's peaks and it's mobile. I thank you very much for attending today. I hope that you have enjoyed today's webinar. I remind you that this is one in a series to help you grow your business internationally. So please do know that we have coming up e-commerce in China and how to sell online in Europe. So join us again soon. When I close this webinar, you will get a survey. So please stick with us for a moment or two. And then 6 quick questions. Give us some feedback. We would welcome that. And also, I remind you that you will get a recording in the slide deck on Friday. And we look forward to getting that out to you. So I hope that you enjoyed the webinar. Thank you very much indeed. I hope there's a lot of useful information, a lot of takeaways. This is I think that Susanna has done a fabulous job. So I'd like to say thank you, Susanna, on behalf of us all. And therefore, yes! Susanna, that really was an impressive performance. Thank you very much indeed. It really has been a great webinar, lots of good information. And again, our thanks for you for attending, and we wish you all a great afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, John, and thanks to all the exporters. Happy exporting.
Happy exporting. Thank you to the USA.